Hi, I'm Jodie. Right. I'm Jodie, and I don't think I actually know many of you on the call. Nice to see you though, Laura. I've not seen you for a long time. Um, but yeah, I don't know many of you. I don't actually know on the call, so this is quite nice because normally when I do these sorts of events, especially for like Sheffield people, I tend to know a lot of the people, so it's quite nice that none of you know who I am. So I'm Jodie Marshall. Um, I do lots of different things. My baby is my social enterprise called A Mind Apart. And we are a performing arts organisation, working with all forms of arts, really. Scarlett, I'm going to put my email in the chat at some point. It would be great for you to contact us because we're always looking for art psychotherapists in the work that we do. So just kind of make a note of that, Scarlett, that you need to one of us needs to chase the other one on it. So yeah.
Thank you.
So A Mind Apart, we work with young people, not in education, as well as adults that are struggling with maybe like social interaction and things like that. Maybe they've got learning needs. And we sorry, I was just reading Helen's chat comment in the comment then. I probably need to turn the chat off so that I don't get distracted. So that's what A Mind Apart do. We're 16 years old. I'm going to talk a bit about A Mind Apart in more detail in a moment, but just tell you a bit more about me. So I have a performing arts, I have a drama degree. So that's what I did at university. I went to Lincoln University and studied that. And I came straight out of university at 21, told my lecturer, my professor at university, that I wanted to start a company. He told me I needed to go and work for other companies before I could actually own my own. Left university, spent 6 months trying to work for other companies, didn't really get anywhere, and set up A Mind Apart. So set it up at 21. If you're really clever, you can do the maths and roughly work out how old I am. So I set that up at 21, and then partway through my 20s, I decided that I wanted to have a bit more of experience around the business side of stuff and really understand the business element of it. I was quite clear when I set A Mind Apart up that I didn't want to set it up as a charity because I personally feel like the charity model doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work even less than it ever did. And I'm not convinced it works within the arts sector anymore. And I actually think that what we've done in the creative sector, specifically in the arts, the performance arts, not so much tech, but within kind of combined arts area, I think actually what we've done is we've undermined ourselves and we've undermined our skill and our craft. Because in having everything as a charity, we've actually kind of put ourselves in the position where everybody expects everything for a low price or for free, and it's at the detriment of us. So when COVID then happened, we were in the shit, effectively. There's no other way of saying it. We were. And I firmly believe that's one of the reasons why. So for me, it was really important that we had an income-driven aspect to our work, that we were seen as a business, but also that we'd got this not-for-profit stuff that we do and that we really understood the communities that we were working with and in. So hence going down the social enterprise route. We're a limited company by guarantee, not a CIC. And that's partly because the CIC wasn't really a thing when we set up. It was just starting to be introduced and people didn't really understand it. But it's also that the CIC would not be the right model for us anyway, even if we changed it. It just wouldn't work right now for us. So I spent quite a long time doing that. I then did a master's in social enterprise and cooperative management, came out of university, and basically then decided that I wanted to do a bit of consultancy stuff with my masters. Not many people have got my masters. It's a very rare one. I think there were just 2 cohorts that went through it, and it was delivered by some top people within the social enterprise world. Rory Ridley-Duff being one, who's retired about 2 years ago now. And it was absolutely like key for me to really grappling with where we wanted to go as a company in A Mind Apart. But what I also realized is that there were a lot of, it was a growing sector at the time. So I did it in 2015. So it was a growing sector. I actually started it about 2012, I think, but I had to take some time out because of the business. So it took me longer to actually graduate because it was a part-time course. So I eventually graduated in around 2015. And social enterprise was really, it was still quite new. You know, SEN was still a voluntary organisation at the time. Lots of different people were trying to get SEN off the ground and really kind of build it into what it is today. And it was still this new and up and coming thing. So I decided that I wanted to support organisations to do this. So I took a job part-time. So I was still doing a Mind Apart with a charity in London called Initiatives of Change. And that was as a consultant. I worked with them for 3 years. I was one of their network coordinators. There were 3 of us, and we coordinated a network of volunteers and people working for us across the UK and Northern Ireland. That was very insightful. It was an amazing peace building charity. They have a base in Sheffield as well. But it came with lots of history and really personal history and really old volunteers and when I say old, I'm talking kind of people in their 70s to 90s that were still volunteering, still working, and giving their entire life to this cause. And it was amazing. And their history was very much wrapped up in performing arts as well. They used to have their own theatre that they very much used for propaganda theatre. If anybody knows what that is, that's basically theatre where you're shouting out a message. And they used it against the Nazi regime in the Second World War. So this is kind of how far back they go. And that's an international charity, and they were amazing, but they weren't quite ready to move to where I would have kind of wanted them to go in terms of being a little bit more sustainable. So one of the things I focused on was their fundraising. And what I found was they just weren't ready. They weren't ready for funders. They had millions of pound donor money. And they just weren't there really. So I stepped away from that after 3 years. I'm still in touch with them a little bit. And then I had a bit of period where I went back into a Mind Apart, realised that I was probably hindering the organisation as the founder. So this would have been, 13 years in. Realised I was probably hindering it, probably wasn't helping things, because the staff would want to push something and I'd go, but that's not originally what it was all about. Why are we it was over 10 years ago, organizations have to move on, and I was hindering that. So I then decided to take the role with SEN. So I was the network coordinator for SEN. So effectively I was Terry, and Terry took my maternity over and I just didn't come back. So yeah, SEN was incredible. I loved it. It was a great way for me to use my masters and all the knowledge that I have in the sector. And I absolutely loved just being able to work with the social enterprises in the region and the city. But I had a child. So I had my first baby about a year ago. And I knew quite quickly that I wanted to go back to working for myself fully, and I wanted full flexibility on everything. And I wanted to not have to feel bad to an employer if my child was sick and I needed to take a day off. So then I went into partnership with Fran Ferris and set up Mantle with her. So now I run Mantle, and I oversee a Mind Apart. I'm still the managing director there. I work very closely with Natasha, who manages it all, but effectively I let them get on and do the operations work. So that's kind of me and my journey. So for Anne, that's probably an interesting journey for you, I'm sure. And yeah, and what I'm really interested in is the social enterprise side of things in general, but also how the ethics in business, so how we can be more ethical in all businesses, but also the creative side, and actually how creative organizations can be more business minded. So I see a lot in the work that we do at the Mind Apart. We have a lot of freelancers, and it is amazing how many freelancers do not know how to write an invoice. It drives me absolutely mental, because I get these invoices through that I have to pay, and I'm looking at it going, why can't they just write an invoice properly? And I'm having to decipher things and go back to staff. And So just simple things in, you know, teaching the graduates from creative courses, whether they graduate at college level or at university level, how do you function as a self-employed artist or creative in the sector? Because that is how most people are employed. And just understanding how to do that and how to think of it as a business, because too many artists don't think of themselves as a business. So a mind apart then, a mind apart is we're based in Sheffield. We do work beyond Sheffield. We work from we do 4-day weeks. So my staff are on 4-day weeks. And the reason they're on 4-day weeks is because what we do is quite intense, and we're working with some of the most vulnerable cohorts in the city and in South Yorkshire. And since COVID, my manager's actually a trained drama therapist. And since COVID, we actually implemented drama therapy into the service that we do. And that's now developed into all art therapies. So we've got a music therapist, an arts therapist, drama therapist, and we work with therapists as associates. So they are freelancers, and we work with them in that capacity. And that is booming, absolutely booming. And we started it at a time when the sector was dead. We were the only organisation in Sheffield to actually be employing in 2020 that I know of within the creative sector. Even Sheffield theatres were getting rid of staff. I had the pick of the sector at that point. I had some amazing people apply to work with us. People that will never ever apply again because now they'll go and get a job that's paid better, or, you know, is in a bigger organisation. But at that time, we had some amazing applications, and we secured Arts Council emergency funding and a few other pots of funding. Youth endowment fund we secured, and that basically got us through the year. And it meant that we could also secure our contracts that we had. So we had contracts with schools and local authorities, and we secured those contracts. And effectively, that then meant that those contracts became reserves because we were getting our core costs funded through funding. That's the only time in our entire history that we've been ever funded by the Arts Council. And it was it was 6 months of funding. And it's the only time that we have had kind of probably over 50% grant funding. Everything else we do, in every other year, it's been 20 to 30% grant funding, and the rest has been contract based or fee based or partnership money. So working with organisations who get the funding in, and then we invoice them. And that's quite key to who we are as an organisation and how we function, because what it means is we can diversify really quickly. And we did when COVID happened. We closed a week before the country went into lockdown, because I spotted it way back in November, December. And we'd already got everything in place that we needed to be able to go online with whatever we needed to go online with. So we went straight that week. The day we closed down, the next day we were online. I don't know any other organisation that managed that of our size. And we were then advising through our education networks with the council. They were then coming to us because we'd been doing it and asking about safeguarding, like what do we do on the safeguarding aspects of video and online, you know, doing video calls online with young people and running sessions online. And they actually took our safeguarding procedure and kind of got other organisations to sign up to it effectively. So we're really good at that stuff. We're really good at understanding who we're working with in the safeguarding aspect. In terms of what we do many things, and that's why we are sustainable. It's the only way we're sustainable. I haven't seen anybody else set up the sort of organisations that we set up, that do similar stuff to us, that are able to employ like we do, that are able to kind of function in the way that we do. And so what we do is we've got evening classes that are performing arts classes, so they're young people. We've got an adult class. We do adult workshops in school holiday time. That's like professional development, but it's also acting sessions for people that just maybe want something to do socially, something that's a bit different, or maybe they want to learn acting. So we deliver those pretty much all year round. We have after school clubs. I think we're in 3 schools at the moment. I think it's 3. We deliver an alternative education intervention. So we used to come under the alternative education provision in the city. It nearly bankrupted us. I don't recommend it to anybody that I work with in that sector because it kills you. During COVID, what happened was I turned to the council and I said, we're coming off your contract. We're not renewing it. And they told me, you won't get the schools coming to you. There's no way they'll come to you. And you're not going to succeed. Literally, that's what the department told me. So I said, okay, well, we'll see, because I've already got a waiting list of schools saying that they want our services and they're willing to pay what you charge per day, what you pay us per day, they're willing to pay per hour, because that's what we're worth. And we're not a babysitting service. We're actually specialists in what we do. And I've got highly trained staff. And we now have more referrals than we've ever had on that, on our education intervention. And we have to stagger starters and things like that. And schools are paying a hell of a lot more than what we were ever paid through the council. What we also do with that is we also connect it with the therapy services that we offer. So anybody that comes on our alternative education, there is also an option for them to have group therapy or individual therapy, depending on the individual. Sometimes we'll get a school that says to us, we want this child to attend your provision. So the alternative education provision is about using performing arts to support with conflict management, to support with guiding them through lives, and just basically changing their lives for the better, with the aim of getting them back into some form of education or employment, or sometimes they'll stick with us right until they finish school and then maybe kind of either go to college or go and do something else. So the idea behind that is that everything that we do is creative, because we're often dealing with young people that the education system hasn't worked for. So I see a lot of broken cases where schools are unable to support the individual because either they don't have the creative subjects in-house anymore, or because they don't really know how to support them and how to use creativity to also improve them academically. And we understand how to do that. We understand how the two can work in line. We don't teach maths or English because that's not what we're specialists in. We tried it didn't work. We stick to what we're good at. But what we do is we work very closely with the school who will be doing the maths and English, and we will often do a lot of meetings with the school, with the young person, multi-agency meetings, and basically kind of advocating for that young person with the aim of getting them back into that education, whatever that needs to look like for them. For some students that come to us, we will often say to the school, but they're not ready for our alternative provision. Actually, what they need first is therapy. So our therapists go to schools, or the kids can come to us. So it depends on the individual. And regularly what will happen is they'll come to us and we'll say, right, they need therapy. We're going to put them into therapy for the first term, and then we'll review it after the first term, and we might develop that further. They might then move into group therapy, and then they might then start on the education provision. That's been really critical to us having been able to have a lot less safeguarding issues. So it's meant that actually the young people that come to us are really ready for what we're doing with them, which means that we have way less safeguarding concerns, really, which is massive for the cohort we're working with. So that's alternative education work. The therapy work, we do one-to-one therapy, so it's open to anybody. So if, as a family, if you decided either you wanted to have creative therapy as an adult, or you wanted your child to have it, and you didn't have, your child didn't have learning needs, they didn't have a budget attached to them or anything like that, then you would pay for that. So we do have some parents that pay privately for our therapy, and it's at about £55 an hour. So it's about standard therapy costs, because effectively that's what you're having. So we deliver one-to-one, both. We tend to do that on our site. We also have some contracts with some academies where we go into these schools for a day a week. So we'll have a therapist in that school for the full day. And then they'll have a client base from that school, or they might just be there for anybody to see them, depending on the school. So we've got a few schools with that, and we've got more and more schools wanting that, and we can't get the therapist quick enough because because of the cohort we work with, the therapist has got to be good with that cohort and capable of working with them, but also because the arts therapy courses, and arts therapy covers everything. It covers music, art, drama, music, dance. The arts therapy courses tend to be based in Scotland, London, and Derby. So what you get is the therapists tend to be around those areas. The manager that works for me is on the board of directors for the British Association for Drama Therapists, which has been an incredible thing actually for her to do for us, because it means that she's got access to all these therapists, because every drama therapist has to sign up to this membership in order to be able to actually function, as well as their HCP. So that's been really incredible, and it does mean that she can usually get the therapist. So if she can't get them, it means there's a real shortage, because that, you know, she's got them at her fingertips. So that's how the therapy works. And at the moment, we're currently looking at how we expand that further and how we grow that into other areas. So there's a real need for us to be growing as a business. We're at that funny place right now where we're very much not a startup, but nor are we a 200,000k business. So we're still sitting really in micro to small, depending on the year. But yet the work that if you look at how much work we do and the impact we have, the impact is not the impact of a macro business. It's the impact of what I see a lot of medium social enterprises having in my consultancy. So we're at this really strange place where we either go for big funding or we go for no funding, or because the small funding doesn't really touch the sides anymore, it might get us through a month where we've got, you know, where we're £1,000 short on cash flow or something like that. But it doesn't touch the sides in terms of delivery or growth. And then any other funding, it needs to be a big amount, which is getting harder and harder to get hold of because of the funding landscape as a whole. So one of the things that I'm currently doing is I'm working to expand the board of directors. So I've currently got our graphic designer working on a recruitment pack for me, so that we can really go out and recruit and really improve that board of directors. We've kept it very small since COVID. We were looking at expanding it before, and then we held off when COVID hit, because we decided actually what we needed to focus on was getting through the next 3 to 4 years. But now's the time that we need to be expanding that. So, and I'm wanting to take a bit more of a backseat in chairing things and things like that. So actually, for me to do that, I've got to get the succession sorted of the organisation. And it's sorted in the operational side, but it's probably not sorted in the director side. So that's something I'm working on at the moment. And then from that, the hope is that I will put a case together for social investment. And I'm hoping that we can go for some social investment, which can then effectively really ramp us up. So in theory, I'd probably use it to pay off the bounce back loan that we've got, which is, I think there's about 15 grand on there, so it's not massive. So we'd probably use it to pay off the bounce back loan and then to invest in staff members, because for us, that's the biggest investment, because we're so service driven that actually if we lose our lease, so we rent a space at the Burton Street Foundation, and we have an office there and half of a building that is just for us. Now, if we lose that, if we suddenly can't afford that, it's kind of not a big deal, because the office stuff everybody can do from home if needed. And we can meet kids out if we have to. It's not ideal, but we could make it work. And then in terms of delivery, we can use halls, church halls, you know, community halls, which is where we started. So I know that what we do can work, and regularly, and you know, we still work in community spaces as well. So we can almost shrink that down, but what we can't shrink down is our staff, because we already work on absolute minimum staffing. And actually what we need to grow is, I need more staff to go out and do the work so that we can create more work, so that we can start to then grow. But in order to have that, you've got to have the reserves, which as an organization, and I don't know many organizations right now that do have the reserves for that sort of thing. We just don't have them. We don't have enough. So I think for me, in terms of next step from my part, that is, I've been doing a lot of thinking about this lately. It's been on my mind quite a lot. I think that's the only way that we can really grow the work in the way that I would want it to grow, and in the original vision that I ever had for it, which was that it would be international. 16 years later, we've worked internationally, so we could argue we're international, but we don't have international bases, which is, you know, that was the original vision. So yeah, so that's where we're at really as an organisation. We do a lot of work with other voluntary organisations. So we've done lots of healthy holiday delivery over the last couple of years, where the organisations holding the healthy holiday money have effectively paid us to go in and deliver for them, or run the healthy holiday for them in some cases, and make it all creative. We do regular workshops for organisations. We've got organisations that have kind of got funding for therapists, and instead of getting their own therapists in, they'll come to us and they'll say, right, well, can we commission you to do the therapy? Will you work with us for a period of time? The biggest issue with the therapy stuff at the moment, especially within the third sector, is getting other organisations to understand how therapy works as a whole. So one of the issues that we've found is in fact, 2 years ago, we got a contract with the council to run therapy services for Sheaf. And it never, we got the contract and everything, and it never happened. And one of the reasons why it never happened was because the council did not understand how therapy actually needs to work, and the necessity kind of around the pricing of it. And so we already did the contract knowing that we'd be getting less than what our therapy costs, but we kind of said we'll take the hit because we believe in that this is needed, and we want the relationship with you. And we were doing a lot of work with Sheaf on other stuff as well at the time, but it never took off. And it never took off because of the misunderstanding and the misconceptions in the therapy world. And most therapists generally will tell you this stuff. So actually, you know, when you're quoting somebody to deliver therapy, and you're saying, well, as an organisation, for us as an organisation, it's a bit different when you're a freelancer. But as an organisation, if we're saying, well, this is what we're quoting you for therapy, and out of this you'll get 4 hours, effectively what we're charging for is 5 hours, and sometimes 6, because if we're there a full day, we have to account for our freelancers' time. I can't say to a freelancer, yeah, go to a school for a full day, you're going to have an hour's lunch break or an hour in between clients, but I'm not going to pay you for that. Like, that's really difficult to do. We can't really do that, because they're probably going to be doing the paperwork and the note writing in that time. So just because they're not in front of the client, it doesn't mean they're not still working for us. And so I would say that that's in terms of the therapy stuff we do, that's one of the biggest issues that we're having at the moment. And then when we've had a few conversations with some organisations who have wanted us to do stuff, and when we've kind of gone, but we've said, well, this is the hourly rate, and then we've gone back and they've said 4 hours of therapy, and we've charged, you know, we've said, right, this is what it would cost, it's 5 hours. They're like, no, I said 4. And we're like, yeah, but you have to add an hour for note taking and in between clients, and a therapist can't have back-to-back clients. It's not how it works. It's not any good for their mental health. They need at least 15-20 minute break in between clients. So I think it's things like that we find we're kind of negotiating a lot. As an organisation, that's not new to us, because what we do is so different that it's sometimes very hard to articulate. So it's only now, 16 years later, that we're confident in how we articulate it, but also most people know who we are now, and most people get what we do. And if most people come into us, they usually come into us because of word of mouth, or because they've seen something specific that we've advertised. And And because of that, we can kind of sell it a lot easier. But 16 years ago, it was a really hard thing to sell, and you're constantly justifying it. So I used to sit in meetings with council officers justifying, why creativity is important and why what we do is absolutely critical to this child's life. And it's only now that we've got thousands, and I mean thousands. I mean, we're probably over the 16 years, we've probably had contact with about 10,000, possibly more, young people and families and children over the years, just in Sheffield alone. And that includes theatre and education work. So that includes going in schools, doing assembly work as well. But we average on about 1,000 kids coming into contact with us a year. So those numbers for the size of what we do and who we are massive. They are big. That's a big impact in one city. And it's only now that we've got that behind us that we don't oversell. If you don't want it, you don't want it. If you don't want to pay for it, then go away. Because actually, this is what we're worth. And my staff have usually got 3 or 4 degrees. In fact, I don't think I've got a staff member at the moment that hasn't got a master's in something in our area. And the girl that runs it, Natasha, who manages everything for me, head of services, she's got 2 masters because she's got a drama therapy. I think it's classed as a master's drama therapy. And she's got a master's in education, and she's got a performing arts degree. So, the staff I've got are highly qualified, and they come to work for us not because I can pay them a hell of a lot of money, because I can't. And we're okay on salary. We're living wage. We're the real living wage, so we're above minimum wage, and we work on real living wage. But we're not the best paid. They could go and get paid much better elsewhere, but they don't get the care that we give as an organisation to them. So the health and well-being of our staff is really important. And we listen to them, and we do things like go down to 4-day working weeks for staff members. Give them extra holidays where they've committed to us for years. Invest in their personal development, and allow them to go and do extra training if they want to do so. Give them the time to do that. Sometimes we might be able to give some funds towards it. So we work hard to invest in our team so that our team are committed to us. But that also comes at a physical cost to the managers, to myself and to Natasha. But I think it's a cost that's worth it, because that's, it's part of being a social enterprise, that we value who works with us and who works for us. So that's kind of a rundown of who we are and how we do it and what we do. I'll put the website in here so that you can have a look in a bit more detail. The website is like the one thing that is not up to date in terms of design and what it should be. So if you really want to see how we're functioning, our social media is really on it. The services are all there on the website and everything, but I'm just trying to secure some funds to try and get it all completely redesigned and completely redone, and with kind of a therapy service embedded into it and stuff. So, but that's the website with kind of what we do. Yeah, I think that's it.
Thanks so much, Jodie. Let's open up to some questions, and I'm going to take advantage of being the chair and ask the first, if that's all right.
Yeah.
I'm quite fascinated, even though I know you and we work together, I'm quite fascinated by the relationship between you and A Mind Apart. And you talked about that moment when you realised kind of the staff and the team had sort of moved on. So, and you also hear about these stories of kind of burnouts of founders and things. So, how did you get to that point where one might see is kind of that perfect balance of you kind of, still being there and still being energetic about what this organization does? And I mean, maybe there's some burnout there at one point and a process you've been through, but how did you get to where you are now in terms
of so there was definitely burnout. So I set it up, and within a year I'd employed Natasha to teach a class for me. So that gives you an idea of how my brain functions. So when I say I'm an entrepreneur, I really am an entrepreneur. And I always kind of, in my head, I always think of A Mind Apart a bit like Virgin. So if you think about Richard Branson, he sets up one thing in Virgin and then he goes, I'm bored of this. I mean, he's got ADHD, so that's a whole nother level of entrepreneurship. But he's like, I'm bored of this. I'm going to set up another thing in Virgin. And then he ends up with all these companies. And it's a bit of a similar thing in A Mind Apart. That's one of the reasons why I've got so much going on all the time, because I've kind of created, partly because it's who I am, but I've created this culture where I've been, yeah, we'll do that. So we'll start this class in this community hall. Oh, I'm bored of teaching that. These kids are boring me a little bit. They're a bit too good. I'm going to hire somebody to come and teach that for me. And then I'm going to go work over here in a school with these really naughty kids who, like, I get totally energized from. And I really love. Oh, and also I'm going to work with this youth group over here because I know the youth workers. And just why not? Because I want to be, like, involved in that stuff. So part of it is me as a person. And I think that's a massive reason why it is like it is, because literally that's how it started, how I've just explained it. And I think so then kind of, but what that's then done, it's encouraging entrepreneurial spirit within the team. So what then happens is we bring in a new staff member, and this staff member says, oh, I do circus. So I teach drama, but I also do circus. So we would say, that's amazing. So think about how you can bring circus into what you're doing with us. Like, is there something you'd like to do with the young people in circus, like, or something that you'd like to explore? Like, let's do it. We'll help you. And if it's something that we can get funding for, we'll look at funding. So we really try to encourage artists and staff to bring their own skill set into what we're doing and themselves into it. So, over the years we've done improv. We had an improv guy, and for 3 years whilst he was with us, we were suddenly an improv experts in the city because he was running it all and he was great. He left and we went, we don't really want to carry on with improv. No one's really in it properly. But then somebody came along that did circus. So we did some circus stuff. So I think that we try and be flexible in the different activities that we're offering, based on what our clients want. So the core will always be there. So the core is always performing arts classes, holiday clubs, after school clubs, like that core is there. But then there might be other stuff that we add in for a period of time whilst we've maybe got different staff members. So that's helpful because it means I don't end up doing everything. But the real part of it was when I took the job in London, I was out of the organisation for quite a lot of time. And that was great. And it meant that the team that I had at the time could really crack on and do what they did. And we'd split the team up. So we had like very specific departments. So I had somebody doing the event stuff, somebody doing the after school clubs, somebody doing the classes and the daytime. But that just didn't, ironically, that didn't work. So from a business perspective, you'd be like, yeah, you totally need to divide these up. But for us as an organisation, it didn't work. And actually what happened is everybody got knackered because they were still all having to teach and then also doing some management. So everybody was exhausted. So I came back after being in London. I was in Sheffield still, but I was working up and down between Sheffield and London a lot, like weekly. So I finished that job and I came back into A Mind Apart for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And suddenly I'd lost half of my staff team. We couldn't afford to get more again. So everything was me and Natasha again. And me and Natasha, just before COVID, we were seriously looking at the organisation and looking at, do we shut? Do we close down? Because we can't do this physically. Like, we've been here before and we don't want to be here again. And then COVID hit. And we both like took this massive, and the board as well, we all just took this massive breath out and literally just went, thank fuck. Like, that's the language we use. It's awful, but that's the language we use. Because actually what happened for us as an organisation was, it meant that we could take a step back 6 months earlier than we'd intended to. So we'd always said, by July, we're going to stop and we're going to review everything, and we're going to use that summer to completely review what we're doing and really think, some really serious thoughts, because we couldn't just leave some contracts. We were in contract and we couldn't just leave those contracts. But actually COVID meant we could do that then. So then I said, I don't want to be this tired. I don't want to be working nights anymore. I've done it my entire career. Don't want to do it. I want flexibility and I need to be on the business and not in it. I've been trying to get there for the last 15 years. I need to be on it. And Natasha said, I don't want to be working nights. I want better kind of balance of my life. I don't feel like I've got it and I want to be paid better. So we said, right, okay, let's start again. So we mothballed down and we went for the funding. And when we went for the funding, we increased all our salaries and we decreased days working. So we went from 5 days to 4 weeks. So staff don't work more than, they get paid for a 32 to 37 hour week, depending on the staff member, but nobody works 5 days. It's always 4. And I said to Natasha, even though she at that point as well, she was actually working 3 days. She went to work in 3 days so she could do her drama therapy course as well. But I basically said to her, I'm not going to cut your holiday. So you can still have the equivalent of full-time holiday, like off. And I will pay you for the day that you're in at uni and not with us, but I'm not going to pay you for your placement days. So on the days she was in uni, she got paid. And then placements, she didn't get paid. And that just meant that we could take a step back and rebuild it how we wanted. So anything we put in, if we didn't have the funding for a teacher, then we didn't teach it. And that's how we went with it. So whereas previously it would have been, well, we don't have funding for a teacher. Oh, I'll just teach it. But we didn't do that. And I think that was absolutely key for us. And the best thing that we could have done. And COVID saved our organisation, I think.
Do you want to come in, Veronica?
Yes, if I may, Pete, I wanted to ask a question. Jodie, thank you very much for your presentation. And I was actually quite impressed with the energy, because as a business owner, I know that what you've described didn't come from lying in and turning up at midday. Yeah, it was doing the hard graft. I just to clarify, how many people actually work full-time in your business? And how does that relate to associates or freelancers that you may be working with?
Yeah, so I've got 2 full-time staff members and then a part-time administrator. So that's my core team, and then me. So I still draw salary from it, but my salary is a bit all over the place because it always depends on how much time I've given the business at that point. So there's 4 on payroll. And then I have, I think we've got 4 therapists at the moment. So they're associate therapists. So that's basically they're freelancers. They have to have a UTR number, etc. They have to be doing other bits of therapy in other places. And they might give us a day a week, or we might call them in for, they might just have one client with us. But that's basically associate therapists. We're looking at whether we can, what I'd like to do in the next 12 to 18 months is bring in another part-time therapist that's on our payroll, because we can get more, and this is very much a business decision, not a kind of caring for the individual decision, let's say. But we can get more for our money's worth if the therapists are on payroll, because a freelancer therapist is going to charge 45 to 50 pounds an hour. Whereas if they're on payroll, you're looking at minimum £17 an hour that you can pay them. And that's on the lowest grade. So even if I put them on like a £20 an hour, it's still less than, but yeah, so at the moment, we're just at the place where we're just factoring out what are the kind of employment costs around that, because it's the employment costs that rack it up. So at the moment, it's still cheaper to keep them as freelancers. And certainly in terms of resource wise, but I think Natasha would really like to have another therapist on the books that is working alongside her. So that's kind of where we are with that. And then we have probably, I think we've got 3 freelancers at the moment within the arts side.
Yeah,
So
I was just trying to get a feel for size of organization, because as you said, there are implications if you're bringing people on board and you become the employer rather than freelancers, because you need to add up those bits. And because I heard you also mentioning, Jodie, that you were planning to have on board trustees or non-executive directors. I wondered whether that meant that you'd also consider having investors within your business.
So,
Or for
we
parts
don't
of the,
have,
well, I
we
don't know how to,
yeah, so we, at the moment, we're a limited company by guarantee, and we don't have a share clause. We have a very specific not-for-profit clause, that is, we've never really changed the articles because we've never needed to. They were very well written by a consultant that I worked with at the time. But we have a not-for-profit clause. We have an asset lock, but the asset lock is very vague. So the asset lock is basically assets go to another organisation that is classed as not-for-profit. Super vague. So it's not like a CIC asset lock where they're a bit more specific. And then there's also a clause in there that states that each year my board of directors have to be re-elected. So we don't have to have an AGM every year. So we didn't have one this year. But effectively, they have to be re-elected. The only person that never needs to be re-elected is me, and I'm named in my
That's
article.
clever.
I didn't come up with that. That was a consultant, but I give it to a lot of clients. When I'm working with clients on articles, it's one of the things I say, consider it. It's a lot harder to do it in a CIC.
Okay.
Limited company by guarantee, you can totally do that because you can be a lot freer with how you want those articles to look. So that clause is in there. So effectively, what that means is I can never get kicked off. So even if I say I don't want to, I want somebody else to start chairing the board, I want somebody else to start doing all the work, I'm still there as the founder.
As a founder.
It's effectively like a founder clause. It's a bit like a founder clause, which you'd get in a shares company. And then what it also means is I get final say. So if there's something that we're voting on, I mean, that wouldn't happen at the moment because we've only got 3 on the board. But if there was something that we were voting on and we were an equal number of board and it was a tie, I would get final vote.
So if, for example, investors are interested, you could decide if to bring it to your board and if to move, well, to have a vote on it.
Yeah, but the vote would have to be, so if we voted and let's say it was 4 and 4, so 4 yes, 4 no, I would get the final, I'd get a second vote.
Yeah. Okay. I'd love to have a chat with you after this. I'll connect on LinkedIn if that's okay.
Yeah, Veronica, I am also one of the consultants for Sega. So if you've just signed up to Sega, go back to Sen, because you can probably get some of my time for free on this stuff as well.
All right. Okay. I actually wanted to, which is something I'll come back to Peter on, and I actually have just sent a message to Mike to connect on LinkedIn because I'm not certain who to deal with it, but I'm interested in that from the perspective of delivering rather than receiving. So it's one of those that I'm keen to follow through on. But thanks to that, Jodie. Yes. So it was more about a few ideas going through my head that maybe I thought it would be useful to share with you rather than receiving your services specifically.
Yeah, well,
thanks
both.
again.
Happy for both. Yeah.
Okay. Cheers then.
All right,
thanks. Thanks, everyone.
I think we've probably got one more chance for one more question for Jodie, and then I might ask Mike if he wants to say anything a bit about the Sega program before we close. Are there any more questions for Jodie, firstly?
Well, I did put a question in actually, Peter. I sent it directly to you because Jodie was busy on Sheffield talking to everybody. Because it was amazing what you said, Jodie. There was so much information there, and I was just trying to summarise what are the key things that you want. And so I sent a message to Peter, just saying based on what Jodie is saying, what she does for Sen and mine for Part, what is it that you would like from the group? With all the things you're saying, and I was like, is it funding? Is it this? Is it? I think you've covered some of it, but I was just to summarise of what that is it, so you're looking for new board of directors and you're looking for funding and you're looking to connect with other partners. Is that it essentially, the summary?
Yeah, I mean that's, we're effectively we're always on the lookout for things, so it's not but at the moment those are the areas that I'm focused on as a director, and I guess the point there is that since I've become on the business rather than in it, I'm able, a lot of the stuff that I do for other organisations from a consultancy perspective, I'm able to now start doing those for Mind Apart because I've got that overview and I've got that capacity to do it. Whereas when you're operational, it's really, really hard to do that stuff. So that's, but yeah, at the moment, the stuff that I'm kind of looking at are expanding that board, and getting some business-minded people on it as well. So an element of lived experience, of course, but actually we had a conversation as a board, and this is an interesting one, because as a board we had this conversation, and actually, whereas it's important to have the lived experience in the organisation, because the cohort we work with, they're not necessarily right for the board. So we have to find another way of bringing them into those conversations, because what we need right now as a board is I need people that understand investment, that so that we can go for social investment. I need people that can understand business. So it's not really necessarily right, which is what a lot of organizations are doing, and it's right for them, but for us it's not necessarily right for me to say to my 22-year-old students that have been with us since they were 5, I'd like you on the board because I want your experience. We need to find a way of getting their experience into that board in a very different way, because what I need on the board is people that have got the business skills and experience, because that's the only way we're really, really going to grow. We don't need the arts experience as such. Because that's kind of covered in my staff team, and we've got that. What we need is the business experience, and the only way to really get that is on the board for who we are. So yeah, so that's the lived experience thing's always an interesting conversation, I think, when you look at it like that, because yeah, we're becoming a harder sell to funders, because what I'm saying is I'm looking at their CVs. I'm not looking, I want their CVs, please. Like I'll do it in a very inclusive way, but I want their CVs, and that's what's important to me right now.
And do your board of directors, trustees, are they the volunteers, or do they get paid? Yeah, okay.
No, I get paid. I'm executive. The rest are non-exec.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jodie, so much, and thanks so much for obviously the energy, but particularly the sort of transparency and openness about kind of how a Mind Apart operates. And I know that in terms of your own consultancy work and the work that you're doing through us via Sega, is that you are kind of very transparent about that sort of lived experience in your business, and that's really valued. So yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. Mike, do you want to say anything about, because obviously about the Sega program, because there obviously is the opportunity to work with consultants like Jodie?
Yeah, I'll try and keep it brief, because I actually do have to run off in a second. But yeah, basically the way we're doing it is, well, I don't know how much to explain, but essentially the program is working at the moment. So you call the chamber to get a referral, and then they'll book you in with me. And in that session, we'll be doing like a sort of mapping exercise to like work out what the areas are that would be most useful in terms of support for the business. And then from there, we kind of make a personalized plan, like specific to your social enterprise, and match you. And that's like, if there's a consultant that people particularly want to work with, like it's their choice, but we'll try and match you to one who most has the experience in the areas, or one that we think fits best with you. There's the grant available for like a range of things, direction to lots of different resources, events, peer networking groups. Yeah, there's just like a lot of great support available. And yeah, I'm trying to make the sessions because at first it was more just like kind of filling out a form, but kind of changing the process to make it a bit more visual and less like bureaucratic. But yeah, it's a really great program, and I'd recommend signing up if you can.
Thanks, Mike. And yes, and obviously in terms of the network, please do use us. Please do connect with each other. Please come to our events. There's the regular monthly networking event that we run in conjunction with the Sheffield Sustainability Network. In terms of our lunch with events, our next event is going to be on the 26th of February, I think it is. It's a Monday. That's going to be at Burton Street. We're going to be hearing from Claire, who's the MD there, who's going to be talking about Burton Street and how she became involved in that. And we're going to sort of feed you at that, so there's no need to. If you lose your apple, don't worry, it's not a problem. So thank you all so much for coming, and special thanks to Jodie. Really appreciate you giving your time for us. So
thank you for having me.
So do hang around. I'll keep the call open if people want sort of a smaller group discussion. But if not, we look forward to seeing you at an event very soon. Thank you all for coming.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Pete.
Thanks,
Mike, I
Jodie.
wanted to ask, would I be able to have a chat with you soon after this, or should I just wait until you respond to my email? Sorry, my LinkedIn message. What would you suggest?
Sorry, did you say me? Sorry, I didn't
Yeah,
quite-
sorry. I think you're the only Mike. That's the name I'm seeing.
Sorry, yeah. I'll check your LinkedIn message and yeah, I'll get.
Okay, and then you'll get back to me.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. And Pete, likewise, would I be able to have are you still holding the membership brief, or is that someone else
Yeah,
now?
that's right. Yeah. Always happy
Yeah.
to.
Would I be able to have a chat with you
Yeah.
at some point? Because I know I sent a message, but it was around Christmas, LinkedIn, and email.
Yeah, by all
That may have
means.
been lost in the pile.
Yeah, by all means. We've obviously been very busy. Sort
No,
of
I can
getting
imagine
the new
that.
Sega program off the ground. So yeah. But
So I'll send a reminder on LinkedIn, or would you prefer email?
drop me an email if that's all right.
Email. All right, will do. Thanks, everyone. Bye now.
All right. Thanks, Veronica. So. Thanks for coming, Laura. Nice to see you again. So, yeah.
A long time, yeah. Lovely to see you. See you later.
Take care. Bye. I'll just stop recording, April.
Fab.